run that, but there's a really great guy that does.
Yeah,
Anyway.
Phone number here is 413-585-1033. We'd love to get some callers on the air to join in this discussion because I think it's a valid discussion. We're sitting here 9 years after the event, and it kind of seems unfortunate. Not a lot of people showed up for the films this past weekend. I was kind of disappointed in that. Of course, there was a lot of competition with the nice weather and things like that, but I think it kind of bared example to like how people are they just kind of want to forget about it, but I'm always on the opposite of that, and I certainly haven't forgotten about it. It doesn't seem like it was 9 years ago to me because it's still fresh in my mind. It's still fresh in my mind how I felt that day and how I wondered what was happening, and how so many of the pieces of the puzzle just don't fit for me. And the more I find out about it, the more I talk to people like Bob, and the more documentaries I see on it, the more questions I have. And it's kind of interesting when you talk to just lay people about it, like friends and family and whatever. It's like they don't seem to have a lot of answers either, and that's kind of across the board how there's just not a lot of facts there. And one thing I thought was really interesting about it is that of how long it took them to actually get an investigation going, and the fact that the Challenger disaster, things like that happen, and they get, just with regular plane crashes, they get investigations going like on the spot. And
sure, the Warren Commission, sure.
Yeah, exactly. But for some reason, with almost 3,000 people die in one day from a supposed terrorist attack, there's just no investigation for, I believe it took over a year.
Yeah, I forget what film it is. It might be The End of Loose Change, which is a great documentary on 9/11. They do a little breakdown of each kind of event. I think the Challenger's mentioned, and JFK and the Warren Commission's mentioned, and the 9/11, and they mention the days in between the event and the beginning of the investigation, and they mention the amount of money spent, and in comparison in this little chart, it's pretty obvious how little attention and how little interest there was in actually getting behind what actually happened on 9/11. And you and I have had this discussion before. If it hadn't been for those women, the widows, the 9/11 widows from New Jersey and other places, they call them the Jersey Girls, and there's a great film about them called 9/11 Press for Truth. If it really wasn't for their grassroots movement and just literally bullying politicians and showing up and getting in their faces and saying, we demand this, there may not have been the little official investigation that we have.
That's right. So I think the Jersey Girls can be an inspiration to everybody, that if, all hope is not lost. I think that if you have a critical mass of a certain amount of people that are demanding answers, I think it forces them to do something about it, which they did very little with the report. There's gaping holes in it, but they actually, were somewhat put on the spot with that. So yeah, definitely Press for Truth, one of the most interesting movies I've seen. I'd recommend that to anybody out there. This is Mass Transition on Valley Free Radio. We're doing a special 9/11 edition of Mass Transition. Just over 9 years ago was the terrible tragedy that happened. We're trying to get some insight on that, so you're more than welcome to call in and engage yourself. 413-585-1033. The number to call. Will be on the air until 11 p.m. tonight. And kind of fitting, 9/11 happened on a Tuesday, and it just, they planned it. It was right. Planned when people were going to be at work at 9 a.m. Midweek. Nothing exciting happening on a Tuesday.
And here we are again on Tuesday, and it's between 9 and 11.
Yeah,
I think they might accuse us of being Illuminati with our power numbers. I think we arranged this probably about 13 years ago, and
there you go.
Just joking, making light of the situation, but I do have a little bit of a structure for tonight. I put a CD together of just some clips and things I found straight off YouTube, and just random Google searches. I'm sure the CIA and the NSA love to check out my little Google searches and such, and my Facebook page postings, but somebody's got to be on the red list. And what I did is I just kind of strung together some different clips and quotes and things, and I'm going to try and explain the 9/11 Truth Movement, that there's basically two levels to the 9/11 Truth Movement. And the first level is just waking people up to the fact that the official story has a ton of inconsistencies in it, and us members of the truth community could go on days and days and days with specific evidence and things like that to talk about and point out just inconsistencies in the story. So the first level of 9/11 Truth is just saying to people, hey, the official story is bunk. It's a bunch of nonsense, and here's 200 reasons why, and they're all provable from legitimate news sources and scientific, well-documented scientific research. The next level to 9/11 Truth, and this is where this is what the slippery slope or whatever. And when we do street activism, this is the part of 9/11 Truth that we completely stay away from, because you can't wake someone up to a brand new concept and do this part of it, which is, everyone wants to know, oh, so you think 9/11 was an inside job? Not necessarily. But that's the second level to 9/11 Truth, is in saying, well, if there's all these inconsistencies and it wasn't 19 guys with box cutters, then who did it? Okay, well, everyone's entitled to their opinion as to who did it. But none of us are district attorneys or whatever, legitimate legal process we're going to take to actually, try and find the people that did this. You got to remember, you have 3,000 murdered people. 3,000 unsolved murders, that there's 3,000 families and friends and loved ones that are waiting for, when I've never experienced this or had this happen to my family, but I'm sure that when a loved one is murdered, the whole family kind of goes on pause until we figure out who did this horrible thing to our family. So this is a pretty big deal, and we want to do it legitimately, not by a bunch of tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy people on the street corner saying, shouting out different names of people or something. So it's a big problem that when you're trying to really be grassroots and be on the streets and explain to people that, hey, there's a bad line of bull that we were sold as the official story, and let's just wake up to that first, and let's get a whole kind of collective movement of people saying, we don't accept the official story, what are you going to do now, before we get into the second level, which is if it really wasn't 19 guys with box cutters, it had to be some kind of an inside job, and then you get, we're going to get into that kind of trouble tonight, but if I could sort of explain the structure of how I'd like things to go tonight.
Absolutely.
Basically, we're going to get into the specifics and the evidence and the little nitpicking clues, but before we do that, I'd like to paint a broad picture. And the broad picture that I'd like to paint is that there is a legitimate elite out there, a small group of extremely powerful people that have been in power for hundreds of years,